Hi, Anti-Society. Welcome back to the Antisocial Planet. And today we are checking out Stray Kids' Rockstar album, and I'm pretty excited for this because between La 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 La, yes, I do have to count. I'm sure that there's a short form somewhere, and Megaverse, I feel like we're going to be dealing with some cool stuff in terms of like multi-dimensions and a bunch of like crossover points and things like that. So I'm excited to see where we go with that. I'm going to try and not descend too much into lore things because, again, there's no good way for me to summarize it. I have too many thoughts about things that I didn't make videos about, and I don't fully know which thoughts are my own because I was in the trenches of Stayville at some point when it came to lore, so I don't know, and I'm sorry, but I'm excited to see where we go with this. I already have some thoughts about what might be lyrically part of this album, just given the titles of some of the songs. All right, blind spot. I have a couple of different ways that I can interpret that. One is like blind spot is, I think, behind. You know how there's like a blind spot that's just outside of your peripheral? So it could be like the come up, right? Like they appear in your blind spot when you're like competing against someone, maybe? Or blind spot as in, it's sometimes seen as like a flaw, right? Like you have a blind spot as in like you can't see a flaw that you have or something that you fall short in. I'm not sure if we're going braggadocious or reflective or both simultaneously. We'll find out. Whoa. Is that a synth or like a lot of posts on a vocal? Beautiful. Whoa. Okay, first off, the way that those drums came in, I love the beat of this, the way that it almost feels like a soundtrack, right? Already, like it already feels like an OST. That fast delivery from Seungmin with that beautiful flip up into, I want to say like a head voice. Gorgeous. So well done. Oh, I love this. I'm like a dark knight, right? Talking about like literally a dark knight as in like someone who is like, I don't know, almost like an antagonist, or you say someone's a dark knight and that they're less expected as being the victor. So like I was saying, of someone sneaking into a victory in your blind spot, like you don't see them coming. Love the layered vocals coming in too. Ooh. Wait, I'm trying to keep up. I know I'm pausing a lot. Like, if you don't like pausing, you shouldn't be watching my channel because I'm gonna be annoying about it. But there's such a like fast delivery with this, and I'm trying to like focus on lyrics as well as what they're doing. And I love that we get that beautiful flip up with Seungmin, and then with Han, we're getting some mixture of almost like talk singing and then him actually singing and like switching in and out of that. And then we get that really like wide vowel sound with a little bit of a vocal fry in there, which is very characteristic of some of the stuff that Han does when he's like doing rap verses or whatever. So I love throwing that in, doing something different in the melody from Seungmin that is, again, very like personality based. And it almost like clashes in some way, but like in a very intentional way, right? Again, them kind of talking about being not necessarily what people would expect, right? Even this line, like the world is at peace, but the devil is jumping and running under the sky. That's so poetic. And I don't know about like translations and everything, but like the idea of there's still this, I don't know, antagonistic force or like this thing that you don't expect because everything is like peaceful, right? Like you get lulled into a false sense of everything is okay. Forward momentum, but very like bright sound, which I think is also interesting given what they're talking about, that there's this really like almost optimistic, bright sound to the song. There's something almost victorious about it, which could be from their perspective. If I get into the chorus and everything, might get more context for that. But it could also be a little bit of a intentional like juxtaposition, right, with the lyrics of like, again, saying, hey, we're in this like fun sounding song, but there's like a darker kind of tone to some of the lyrics. Right, that little like wide vowel. Beautiful flip up from my end too. Love that. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, several thoughts. So like one, I feel like that drop wasn't as heavy as it could be. And I think that is also interesting, given something like Megaverse, which is coming before this on the album, huge drop in that song, right? And there's so much oomph behind la 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 la. I gotta count, okay? 4 laws, whatever. And Megaverse, right? Like they're heavy, they're dark, they're loud, they're very much in that pocket of what Stray Kids is known for sonically. And I think it's so interesting to have this one where it's pivoting to something else, right? Which I know that they can do because I've listened to B-sides in their discography and stuff. I know that they don't just have one thing that they do all the time. But I think that it's really interesting for a song like Blind Spot, and I'm talking about being in the blind spot, right? Saying we're champions, like shining, hidden in these places, right? Like saying you're not going to even see our progress, but we know what it is, right? Like we see how much progress we're making. We see how much work we're putting in. And the moment that you stop, like you discount us or you stop paying attention to us, we're gonna like swoop in your blind spot, right? Like we're just staying there doing all of this work, making all of these leaps and bounds, and you won't even realize what's happening until we're already too far ahead, right? Almost like a tortoise in the hare kind of feeling, which is definitely something that they've referenced to in previous stuff. So having this more like minimal chorus is definitely like them deviating of don't think you know which path we're on, don't think you understand what we're going to do next, because we're always going to keep you guessing. And there's also all this empty space in something that's more minimal in the chorus, and even the vocal melodies, there's like these pauses in it, as opposed to before we had such a momentum to the vocal melodies for that first verse. So having that empty space in there is like literally like those pockets of what you think are empty, but instead like in those little places I'm going to like weave through them and make a ton of progress that you don't even realize. And even I was thinking with those flip ups that we're getting where they're going into these head voices partway through the melodies is almost like that huge jump in the vocal melody seems very symbolic of the progress they're going to be making, right? It's going to seem like they're like down here, like you don't need to be paying attention to them, they're not even a threat, and then suddenly they're like up in all of these heights and you didn't even realize it. And I think that's such a fun little narrative thing to put into the vocal melodies, especially when you got vocalists that can do it like that, right? If you're going to have a vocalist like Ayan and Seungmin, put in something cool like that, right? Even like Lino did a bit of it, right? You can clip up the first part anyway. I love this little breakdown too. Even that like gong sound. 순간에도 누가 몰라준대도 I ain't gonna stop, oh no 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 실패가 눈에 밟혀도 두려움을 다 감추고 I'm just gonna stomp and let it go 무시하는 피웠던 그 과정 속에 있는 나 이건 나 자신과 싸움 스스로를 지켜가 해가 뜨고 지는 밤 하늘 위에 밝은 달 우릴 닮은 듯해 어둠을 감춘 채 떠오르는 Whoa, love that we got like the everything, I don't know, slowing down. We're pulling back a bunch of the production with Felix, right? Everything being contained with him. And then having that, again, pick up with Tangbin there. Love it. And I also love with Felix's verse where it talks about like failure might catch my eye, which I think is really interesting lyrically. Right? Because this whole song makes you think of running, almost like running a marathon. You're just going to keep going, right? Like I was saying, like the tortoise in the hare kind of vibe, and talking about like something catching you, like diverting you off of where you're supposed to be going, right? And I think that's really interesting. I'm just gonna keep going, let it go, let go of the fact that I might stumble, I might fail, I might not succeed at things the way that I thought I would, but that's all right. It's okay to make mistakes and to not have things work out the way that you want them to, because you can learn from those and you can do better with the next thing, right? Just because you stumble doesn't mean that you can't like get up and keep trying, right? So I love having that lyric in there, and talk about invisible like blood and sweat, right? Saying you're not going to see how much work I'm putting in. I'm going to make it look easy, which is something that they talk about a lot in their kind of more braggadocious songs, right? They have a bit of a laid back delivery in some of their songs. They very much have this persona on stage as Stray Kids of this is easy talent and success for us, but it's with a ton of work and rehearsal that goes into it beforehand, right? Like they don't just wake up and put on those kinds of performances, right? There's so much effort that goes into it. Just because you didn't see all of those moments of me like struggling and failing and trying again and putting in all of this work doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It's going to seem like I just came out of nowhere with all of this success and talent, but it isn't. It's because I put in so much effort. I like this is a fight with myself. Like it's not even about you. Beautiful vocal from Lino. Beautiful closure there. Love little vibrato there. No, we're not just continuing on like that wasn't a gorgeous vocal. First off, the buildup of it, the transition into that like mix, beautiful. And again, like the symbolism of that like rise, right? That progression upwards. And I think that it's so beautiful that they're putting those little things into this to just mimic that like lift, right? This whole thing feels very like victorious and bright and like a lift compared to some of the darker sounds we've gotten in the previous songs of this album. But like that beautiful slow lift throughout the entire phrase, gorgeously placed. Beautiful. I'm always here for a Bangtan vocal moment because even though he has vocals in the songs, me being greedy would love to get to just hear more of him because I love his voice, but that's fine. We take what we can get. I'll take the crumbs. It's a bop too. Especially after Felix, have that vocal. Never giving up. Ooh, I love that. Flared vocals. Ooh. Ooh, the harmony on that. But also, like I was saying, going against my expectation of, I was expecting them with the repetition to add in more elements, right, from the production. But because the production isn't like this huge, like, drop or anything, right? There's like a bunch of stuff going on in the production. I love that we pulled it back and it was just their voices, right? All together, harmonizing, and one being like a collective, right? All their voices together, working together, which I think is very symbolic of what they're talking about throughout this whole song, of the work in progress that they're going to be putting in. But also it's like taking away anything that you could point to and be like, oh, you're hiding behind like this production or this like music element or this performance bit or whatever, right? Like Stray Kids tends to have a very kind of bombastic persona when they're on stage. There's lots going on with like choreo and costume and sets, especially with like music videos, right? With the editing and lights, and like, there's so much like theatrics to the way that they perform, and the kind of music that they have that has such a huge sound. It takes up so much space, right? That all of that can be both like a positive and like a critique that people have of their music. And I think it's so nice for this, like the kind of period for this song, right? This end point is to pull everything back, and it's their voices and like a clap, right? With some reverb. It's like, you can't say that we're hiding behind anything else. It's just our voices. It's just us working together as a team that is making this music, right? And I think that's so well placed. If there's any time to bring in something like that, is for a song like this. I loved that. I think they did such a good job of making a song that feels very like triumphant, but it's not even talking about like a victory, right? It's talking about putting in the work. It's talking about how, despite they might have some of the, again, kind of confidence and again like braggadocious kind of feeling that they can have in their singles and stuff, they're still putting in the work, right? They're still putting in the effort. They're still trying to improve themselves. They're not just like settling for where they are right now. They're always like striving for what's the next thing that we can try, what's the next thing that we can experiment with and get outside of our comfort zone, right? What can we grow into? And I think it's so interesting to have a song like this that is, again, not falling back on some of the things that are kind of part of the branding of Stray Kids as a group that I look at as like, that's a distinct Stray Kids sound. And they always play around with it. But this is definitely something that is deviating out of that. And I think that it's a really fun way to be going into this album, of something that's a little bit outside of some of the, again, grandeur that is in the previous songs, to then have something that's kind of in the middle of this album, including those first two songs of, but we're still going to put in the work. Like, we still understand that there's progress that we're making. The moment that you think that we've reached some kind of like plateau is the moment that we're going to surprise you by going in a different direction. So I think that's really fun. And again, sounds like an OST. Sounds like it needs to be like the opener for something, which I love. A lot of Stray Kids songs I feel like fit into that. And I think they all just did such a great job with the vocals as well. Okay, Comflex. Now I'm gonna assume that this is a play on words of some kind, like complex and maybe like reflex or conflict or something like that. So I have thoughts, but I'm gonna save them until I have some more context about what we're doing with this song, and then perhaps I will share them. Okay. Alarm. Siren. Whoa, okay, I'm gonna be honest, I got distracted by the production because of this, like, obviously this like heavy bass that's happening, but then we have this like industrial like sample or whatever, which is really interesting. Again, this kind of like subdued sound so far, which I think is really interesting for this album, especially considering like the drop we get with like Megaverse or even La 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 La. The sheer amount of like production and sound with those, and then coming into these couple of songs where it's a little bit more like pulled back, I think is really fun, of just, let me dial this in and focus in on what we're actually talking about. Okay. Ooh, I like the imagery there. Ooh. I am. Okay, I know I'm stopping right before the drop or whatever. So many things I want to go through like lyrically. I see there we have the complex and like flex complex. Okay, so I was on to something. It's like reflex, but like flex as in like flexing a complex I'm assuming in this case is when someone like has a complex, we say they're unconsciously, I don't know, like I think it could be multiple things. It could be repressing an emotion or a desire, right? Or it can be almost like a delusion of grandeur sometimes too. Like it can be this critique of someone being a little bit too ambitious or whatever, especially given like the context of the rest of the lyrics, right? So I think that's interesting to say. I'm flexing the fact that I have some like imperfections, right? Some things that I'm afraid of, anxieties. I think that we talk about a complex a lot in that scenario of almost like inferiority and stuff, right? So I think that's interesting. So I'm flexing the fact that I'm not perfect, right? I'm flexing the fact that I understand that despite having a lot of confidence in that I can do this, right? Which is definitely what has been going on with the lyrics previous songs. It's also acknowledging that I have pros and cons, right? I'm not someone who is like infallible, and I'm not someone who doesn't like get stuck in my head of could I have done something better. The only reason I continue to like work and do things in a different way or make improvements is because I'm like my like biggest critic. I think it's so many of us, right? Is that no one sees all of the imperfections in something that we've done quite like we do. Maybe I'm just saying that as someone who's like an artist. I'm like, if anyone is gonna see all of the like cracks in the facade, it's gonna be me. So I think that is interesting for the like vibe of the song, especially pulling out a bunch of the production there as well. Some really fun melodies that we're getting. And I love the try me, judge me. Again, no one is a bigger critic than me. Whatever you have to say, I've thought of it. And maybe I'm just saying that projecting as someone with anxiety, but like whenever I get like an unsolicited critique of me, I'm just like, that's nowhere near the worst thing that my brain has told me. So you're gonna have to try harder. I feel like you don't know me well enough to like really get to the heart of my insecurities, but I do. So if anyone is gonna be able to say something that like really gets to the core of who I am, it's my own brain. Especially you look at like my cover, right? Of talking about like you can't judge a book by a cover, but it's all you know is the cover, right? We don't get to be inside of their head. So if you're taking the way that they show themselves, me talking about like a persona or facade, like the way that Stray Kids presents themselves as performers is still just like surface level. You don't even know the whole story. You don't know what's going on in my head. So how can you like pass judgment on what I'm doing? And we even had the lyric earlier on with Tangbin of the like painting imagery, right? Like the blank, and then talking about like the master key, and then I wasn't greedy for all of the colors, right? Even though taking like a black belt of I don't need to do something flashy necessarily. I need to do something with skill. I would rather have the skill in monochrome as opposed to like doing something flashy that like doesn't have the depth to it. But in doing something like that, in experimenting, you're gonna make mistakes and learn things and pivot from what your understanding of stuff is, right? Like the only way to really experiment and find new ways of doing stuff is to like mess up, right? And to do stuff that you shouldn't necessarily, like break things, right? So that's like the only way to really evolve in a creative field, right? So many things. I feel like I talked too much now. I'm sorry, but we get excited about things. I have so many thoughts. Okay, moving on. Love that flip up. Too bright, I'm so flashy. Different, no, I'm unique. That's right, I'm so classy. Nobody can stop me. Comflex. In the dead of wheel, you got Comflex. 만족하는 사람 simply 없는 complaint. 너무 매력있지 Comflex. Wait, that was a nasty beat. Love the playfulness in the delivery too. Even that, just that little like hum of going into it. Even me saying I'm so flashy, right? I think that's like me even talking about that. Like I would rather do something that has skill behind it than something that's just like all flash and no like substance, right? So saying I'm so flashy, no, I'm unique, right? Like you're saying I'm doing something that is like stepping outside of the norm, and you're using that as like a judgment to me, but I'm just doing something different. That's not the same thing. Like there's one thing to make a bunch of noise for attention, and then there's like trying something different and standing out because you're doing something different, because you're doing something experimental. And even this beat on the song is like something that's different. And again, that very playful, very like character driven, like animated kind of delivery is already leaning into that. Like they could have sang something super catchy, right? Stray Kids can do a catchy chorus, right? And instead they're like, let's do something that's a little bit tongue in cheek. Let's lean into some of that like playfulness that is going to be like showing we're doing something different. And but like nobody can stop me. I can do this anyway because like they talked about in so many other songs, we're doing great anyway, so like why not just try something? And people like the fact that we're experimenting, right? Like people like that we're doing something different.
Comflex. Too bright, I'm so flashy. Different, no, I'm unique. That's right, I'm so classy.
Like that's so minimal. I like the little ad-lib going into it too. I love that little hum. Ooh, wait, huh? You have to have this level of flaws to have humanity. Now I know that this is translated and I'm gonna have to like grain of salt with everything that's happening. The basic sentiment of that, I think, is getting to the core of what the song is. It's like I was saying, of I acknowledge that I have flaws. Like they're talking about like pros and cons before, of like imperfections, right? I think that is such a good line of I'm not afraid to like make mistakes or to have flaws or to like, show that I'm not perfect in who I am as a performer, because that's where the humanity is, right? Perfect people, even within an idol culture, right? With Stray Kids, right? The more that someone seems perfect, the less obtainable they are. The fact that we call idols in K-pop is because they're supposed to be something on a pedestal outside of us in some ways, right? Like the way that they're curated to be presented to us is to have them be something like separate from us. But it's like showing the flaws, showing the candid moments is what gives them humanity, right? It's what how we see them as like actual human beings. And with Stray Kids having more of an influence on like their music and the writing process and everything, right? We get to see a bunch of that. We get to see the things that they're thinking about or struggling with, or even just getting to see a bunch of the behind the scenes of them working on albums is showing us all of the work and flaws and like humanity behind what they're doing. It's not like they just give us like a perfect song at the end of the day and they're like, all right, you just have to like trust us that we put in a bunch of work. They're like, here is us putting in a bunch of work behind the scenes and like going through all of these little details of like, how do we actually want to pronounce this? How do we want to hit these specific sounds? How do we want to incorporate different elements of the production into it, right? Because they're part of that process. Love that line. I think it completely like summarizes what they're trying to get to with this song, and like having that conflex. I'm flexing the fact that I don't think I'm like a perfect person, right? I'm flexing the fact that I know that there are things like anxieties and imperfections that I have, and I'm going to flex it anyway, because that's where the humanity lies, right? That's where I become a person instead of, I don't know, almost like a cog in the machine, right? Because I think that comes with some of the criticism, right? Is that people feel like they can say whatever they want about people in the public eye because they don't actually see them as people, right? They see them as like an object to like vent their own like insecurities or angers or frustrations at, instead of like actual human beings. I feel like I'm talking about this way more than I thought I would. When we get to the B tracks, that's when like I get all the good stuff. I love this industrial beat. Ooh, fun delivery. Whoa, I got distracted by the flow there. Hold on. Look at that wind up. Wow, great character delivery there. Lino's falsetto. Whoa. That's right, I'm so classy. Nobody can stop me. Wait, I know I'm interrupting, but I love that, like, pulling everything out, right? Like I was saying, there's so much like space in this, like minimal kind of production stuff in it. And again, going off of the expectation of like who Stray Kids are as a group, right? They're known to be like loud, noisy, tons of like stuff going on production wise, even in this album. And then you have something like this where they're like, we don't need to hide behind that though. Like even the like flashy, no, I'm unique, right? Saying I don't need to have a bunch of stuff going on production wise to make like a catchy song with an amazing beat. I love this like the like doo 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 like sample that they're using that has this like metallic kind of feeling to it. I think that's so much fun. But like, pulling everything out, having that distorted, I don't know, my brain is not working in terms of like production stuff. I don't know production, I'm so sorry. But the like lower voice, right? And then having someone like Felix come in. I love the little like laugh that he kept in his voice. Again, the amount of like character that they're putting in. Like Hyunjin had always has such a good character to his voice. There's something very like animated in the way that he performs. But I think they're doing such a good job of bringing some of that in to this overall, because again, it's like we're going to sacrifice in some ways, right? And I use that kind of loosely, but we're going to give up some of the having perfect vocal performance for the sake of let's bring in character. And I know that's like a little bit of a touchy subject. I feel awkward whenever I say something like that, but like it's okay to give up vocal technique for the sake of character, right? Because then everyone would be singing like operatic. Everyone makes decisions about what character they're bringing to their voice and what their intention is behind how they're using their voice as a vocalist. And I really like that this has a little bit of that like animation or almost like voice acting mixed in with the vocals, saying we don't need to be perfect, right? The whole point of the song is we don't need to be perfect. We need to show who we are as people. So I really like having something like that with Felix, where it's having that little like laugh that you can hear in it, because there's confidence to that, which is going into the whole point of the song, but it's also like I'm choosing to show more of who I am as a person, as opposed to trying to present this like very polished, perfect representation of who I am as a performer. Beautiful mix.
Too bright, I'm so flashy. Different, no, I'm unique.
I love the
That's
ooh.
right, I'm so classy. Nobody can stop me. Complex. In the dead of world, you that complex. 만족하면 살아, 쓸데없는 complain. 넌 매력 이지 complex. Complex. Showing off my weakness, I'm not gonna hide it. Look how shiny it is. This is my pride, got it. 없애지 않아도 it's so beautiful, though. 다 끝내고 밝혀. Complex and flex, complex.
Ooh, wait, so many things. I love the little like drop sound that was happening. Love the not gonna hide. There's also this kind of feeling of hide and seek vibes in it as well. It's almost giving like playing a game, which I think is really fun for something like Stray Kids, and again them kind of having fun with this, and also saying we don't need to be perfect in order to like experiment and play around with things, and like the shiny and flashy and like bright and all of that happening as well. I think all of that imagery is really fun, especially with some of the like stars and universe imagery that we've been getting, and like the build up that was happening there. So good. Did I skip over Felix's little part? I don't even know. We're gonna go back and listen to the bridge again. A little drop. Yeah. I love that combined.
It's just complex. Too bright, I'm so flashy. Different, no, I'm unique. That's right, I'm so classy. Nobody can stop me. Complex. Even data point, you can complex. 만족하면 살아, 쓸데없는 complain. Don't make it complex. Complex.
I love that. I love the ooh like color response, because again it's like it's fun, it's leading into some of that kind of playfulness for this. It's like having all the like layered vocals in it as well, I think is really fun, and having some of the harmonies in it fills out some of that space that we have with the production, but it also has a nice collective feeling. So really fun like pickups in the cadence as well, from like, rapping, and just like the delivery of hitting some of those like consonant sounds, especially with something like Comflex flex, right? So you have some harder sounds in that, and the repetition of conflex, like flex, reflex, like all of that kind of, even combine, right? There's so many ways of playing with those similar sounds all together. And even like I was saying, the one where they have the hum in it, that's like elongating that M sound, which I think is really fun to have that nasal drawn out, to have this almost like humming, like thinking sound, to just slow down some of that cadence. The way that they're playing around with that pronunciation is really fun in this, and love just the character they're putting in their voice for this whole thing, like having again that space in the production where you're not, when you have a bunch of production stuff happening, it's like really bassy and synthy, and there's like just a bunch of stuff going on, you're fighting with that with your voice. So you have to have something that is a little bit of a clearer, brighter, forward sound, right? You have to be a little bit more intentional with where you're placing the sound of your voice, because you're competing with that production in some ways. And with a song like this where you're pulling back a bunch of that and there's a bunch of space around those elements, you can play with the character a little bit and have that be part of almost the instrumentation of the song, right? To have that hum, the harmony is the little like ad-lib call and response, having the little like laugh in it. Bangtan had a little bit of that too in his delivery with the "too bright, I'm so flashy." You can almost hear the smile in the way that they're performing it, and I like having that bit of cheeky feeling to the song, especially since they're like, we're not perfect, so let's like show our humanity, right? Let's show the flaws, let's show who we are as people, instead of just like a polished perfect version of us. Even like at the end with Seungmin's lines talking about not being perfect is all it takes because we're perfect, saying we don't need to like fit into a mold in order to be considered perfect. That's not even the point. Even like this line with Ian of nothing can make the standard, show us some respect, right? The standard of who you're supposed to be is like an arbitrary thing that someone has decided, right? Like society has decided. You go to different places in the world, there's a different standard. You talk to different people, they have different ideas of who you're supposed to be, especially when you're in the public eye with social media and everything. Everyone has an opinion about who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing. And like, what even is the standard, right? No one can decide on what it is because everyone has a different opinion. There's no actual authority that gets to decide what the standard is in anything. And it changes, it evolves over time, right? The standard from 10 years ago is not the same as it is now, let alone further down the line. Like, how are you even going to know what the standard is supposed to be 5 years from now? How can you even predict something like that? So I like that we have to show us some respect. That's it. Like, just respect the fact that we're putting in work, that we're trying something, that we care about what we're doing, and we're trying to be authentic with what we're showing. If you just show us respect, that's fine. Even nothing can make the standard can also be like, no one is going to meet that standard, right? No one's going to meet perfection. Perfection is unobtainable. And this is something that I try to remind myself as someone who's like a little bit of a perfectionist sometimes, who just is anxious and thinks a little bit too much about stuff, that even if someone was completely perfect, let's say hypothetically someone had done absolutely everything perfectly their entire life somehow, right? People would find a way to hate them for that, right? People would be resentful to the fact that they were perfect. So if even the most perfect person hypothetically existing is enough to make people angry, you might as well just be yourself, because someone's gonna be upset about it anyway. So if you can't please everyone, you might as well make yourself happy. And if you're not hurting anyone and we could just show respect to people, it would be so much better. Also, I love that line of show us some respect. That's it. That's the bar. That's all you have to do. You don't have to like us. You don't have to see us as perfect. You don't have to like even necessarily be on like the hype train or whatever, right? You don't have to like what we make. You don't have to like us. You don't have to spend a bunch of time with us or whatever. Force yourself to listen to our music. Respect us. That's it. That's all you have to do. I don't know. That's a low bar and people still manage to just limbo right under it, which would be remarkable if it wasn't sad. Love that song. I love the cheekiness to it. I love that it has the classic Stray Kids confidence to it, but with a lot of character being put into their performances, which is a lot of fun. Cover Me. Now, this is one of the songs that I feel like I've heard about through Stay talking about it, which makes me think that one seems to be a fan favorite, which makes me excited, and that maybe we're gonna get to something more sentimental, maybe a softer sound. Might be about to be proven wrong in a few seconds. But Cover Me makes me think, especially in context of the album Watch My Back, right? The idea that like when you go into a difficult situation, you like say, hey, cover me, watch my back while I do this. So maybe we're gonna get some of that, because for all of the kind of braggadocious Lee into some of the songs on this album, it also feels like we're getting this current of like self-consciousness or self-awareness, right? Like even just in Comflex, there was this feeling of bringing up in the lyrics of I'm not going to be perfect, like I'm not a perfect person. So it feels like maybe we're going to get some of that. I don't know. Okay, acoustic guitar. Beautiful melody.
What do I feel so lonely in this night? 새벽바람 만나볼까? 창문에 걸려있는 starry night 저 밝은 빛에 뒤척이던 날 이젠 날
Beautiful. I'm interrupting you, Felix, darling. I didn't know I was gonna get immediately thrown into my feelings. It's fine. We're fine. I'm not gonna cry much, probably. Okay. Beautiful acoustic guitar coming through. Love that for this because it's talking about some of that vulnerability, right? Like that talking about being like in the dark, trying to sleep. I like that we have some lyrics about like stars and like the bright light, like tossing and turning in the bright light. I think that's such a vivid image for someone like Stray Kids who like are in the spotlight, right? Are gaining like a ton of popularity, especially at this point in their career, right? Extra level to it. And again, for all of the kind of braggadocious, I know that I can accomplish whatever, right? The entirety of like Megaverse, right? But then you add in this feeling of, again, like self-consciousness, because the brighter the light is, like the more visible you are, the more people take notice. And I can, again, cover me, it feels like another kind of layer to that meaning. I think it could both be like, I need someone to watch my back, but it can also be like, I need someone to block this spotlight for me, right? I want someone to be in between me and being like perceived. And I think that having these like marks of light, talk about like the moon, stars, loneliness, even with the kind of like tossing and turning in the light and everything. Again, I feel like it's a lonely place too. You can reach significant heights, right? You can continue to climb higher and achieve things, but the higher you get, the less people are around you that can give support for that or understand that experience. And of course, there's farther to fall, but it gets lonelier the farther you get, right? And even though you might have ambitions, and even talking about, again, this kind of like multiverse vibe, right? You also have loneliness in that. If you're drifting through space, the majority of space is empty, right? So even reaching that kind of height, you can feel like the loneliness and that darkness, and yet also being in the spotlight has its own kind of like isolation as well. All right, y'all are gonna make me cry. Also, beautiful vocal tones from everybody. We're gonna get like a vocal heavy song, and I'm always sat for one of those from Stray Kids. Yeah, wandering around in abundance. Oh, Felix. No, I'm fine. I'm not. Oh my god, it hit me. I was already like, we were getting me like immediately with the like Hyunjin coming in being like, why am I lonely? And I was like, first off, his voice sounds beautiful and you're already gonna get me. Okay, that's already gonna destroy me. And then having Lino have to like someone hug me, and I was like, ooh, feeling it. Felix being like, I'm gonna force myself to smile, and I'm like, boy, do not make my sunshine say one of those lines. Okay, it's gonna get to me. And then just beautiful vocals, right, that flip up into that thin sound, so like delicate and vulnerable. And even though there's like this kind of build up of the sound production wise, it doesn't feel like victorious like a lot of Stray Kids songs do. Like we're used to having kind of that build up to a drop where we get a bunch of sounds incorporated and feeling this kind of like lift. Even in their more like sentimental songs, there's this feeling of like optimism in that lift in the production, right? Like a bunch of these bright sounds come in and it feels you're like being lifted up in listening to the song and like the lyrics that go along with it. But this feels almost like this like crashing in, right? It feels again like they're talking about like crying out, like this idea of something like building and building and building to the point where like the pressure gets to you, right? And then just having Bangchan, first off, #1 supporter of Bangchan getting more vocals in literally anything. I have loved his voice since day one. Just like his tone, the emotion that he puts into it. Obviously, they all have their own like talents and vocals and stuff like that. But just something about his voice I just am drawn to constantly. And the fact that he's the leader of this group and the fact that he has done so much to put this group together and to make Stray Kids what it is. Having him sing lyrics like that is what like finally broke me. It's like, uh-oh, I am too close to this. It's fine. We're totally fine. I don't have tissues near me. I'm gonna just go through this and hope for the best. We can clean ourselves up later, I guess. That with the fucking filling out. I'm gonna need several moments with the song. I can understand why Stayville was like, there were like shockwaves after this song came out. I understand. In retrospect now, I was like, wow, this song is like the one that people are talking about, other than like the viral little like clips I had heard of some of the other songs. And I was like, that must mean that there's something more like sentimental for it to be like a fan favorite. And now I'm here, I'm like, oh no, I understand why there's this feeling of all of us being a little bit too attached to this particular one. But I love getting Tangbin vocals there and little like vocal fry that we got. I love like them playing with this idea of light and not just like the spotlight, right? But we're also talking about like warm light and talk about like the sun and wanting something that's going to embrace you and bring that warmth and melt the emptiness, instead of, I think of the spotlight almost being like this cold, like artificial light that's like shining on you. And I think the symbolism of that with what I'm inferring from what they're talking about, the fact that it's like an artificial light that is pointing you specifically out, I think goes with what they're saying, right? Like the idea of fame and being an idol and being in K-pop industry and having all of this public discourse on what you're doing, and even them talking previously in lyrics of who gets to decide what perfect is, right? Who gets to decide what the rules are of what someone should be, and it changes for everybody. No one can agree on what makes someone like perfect. There's no like objective version of what that is, right? So it is this like artificial feeling, and it's this talking about like tossing and turning of like being uneasy in this place and like wanting to find like rest, and yet you can't because there's like this spotlight on you. And then having that in comparison to something like sunshine, right? And even like the moon, which is like reflecting some of that warm light and is like a spot of light in that darkness and can help in those moments of like loneliness, right? As this breaking up that dark endless kind of feeling when you look up into the sky, right? And there's tons of star imagery in their other songs as well that are like directly talking about fans. I love that comparison of the difference between having this bright, overpowering, artificial light on them versus something that brings warmth and light and has like this natural embrace to it. And sunlight shines on like everything, right? They're not pointed out specifically by the sun shining. The whole world is lit up by it. So I know someone's going to talk about how parts of the world are, but technically it is, because the moon is also the sunlight, but I don't need to science. But no one is like specifically pointed out to have sunshine upon them. right? It's just everything that is. Everyone is equal in that in a lot of ways. So I think that it's really interesting how they're saying like the light isn't the problem, right? In and of itself, it's the type of light, it's the concentration of that light, it's the source of that light and the intent of it that is the issue. Beautiful vocals just all around. I love that we're getting these like really light, airy sounds from so many of them, because it does sound very delicate and emotional, and they can't put the same kind of like strength and oomph behind their vocals as they do in other songs. So I love that we're getting such a delicate sound all around from them. I love the layered vocals too. Long tone. Sungmin. Okay, no, I was already having a moment because you put Sungmin and IN back to back singing those lines, and I was already like, I'm gonna need you to not devastate me when I'm this far in the song already. I'm gonna have to listen to it again though. Again, getting this like vocal fry from Changbin's part is just beautiful, because again, it's some of that vulnerability I always think of when you're putting in specific kind of like tightness into your voice, right? That's a lot of what vocal fry is. It makes me think of when that emotion gets caught in your throat, right? Where you're trying to like hold it in. And especially for a line like this, where it's like, I'm forcing myself to smile. It's like that emotion gets stuck partway through and you're not actually saying what you're feeling. You're not actually expressing it because you feel like you can't. You feel like having the spotlight on you and having people give that like attention and are gonna analyze everything you say and do. The moment that one of them shows emotion, there's gonna be people who are like, why are they crying? Sometimes you just need to cry, okay? I already teared up during this. Sometimes you just need to let the emotions out. Sometimes they're happy tears, sometimes they're sad tears, sometimes they're proud tears. I don't know. Sometimes you just gotta let it out. Feelings overwhelm and then tears happen, okay? We don't need to assume things about anybody. So I love that little detail from his vocals specifically of, again, as we're building up some of this emotion, we get that feeling of almost it getting like wanting to cry out or wanting to say something, being caught with that like roughness in the delivery. And then you get this beautiful lift with Sungmin's voice, right? And again, it has that feeling of this pressure building until like you need an outlet for it. I am. Whoa, I know we're getting to the build-up, but like the way that the production like changed, I don't know, it was like a half note or like a minor or something. There was something off about it. I don't know enough about music theory and I'm sorry, but I love that little touch that I can feel like the unease of it when we're talking about pretending and closing your eyes and again, like putting on a mask, putting on like a persona for the sake of like performance or even them being perceived, right? Part of being a performer is like putting on the performance, right? And idols do it. Fans do it to some extent too, right? There's a certain like understanding that as fans, we're going to behave in certain ways. Some of us know that better than others, but I digress. You go to a concert, there's like certain things that you do as an audience member in that concert that's like part of the understanding of how a concert is supposed to work, right? Yeah, you're gonna clap and cheer and be probably a little bit like louder than you would in a normal circumstance when you're just like listening to music, right? Because there's an understanding of what your participation is as an audience member going to a concert, right? Same with a performer. You're going to put a little bit more into your performance when you have a live audience right in front of you than you might if you were performing for camera or just like practicing or in a recording booth, right? It's going to change depending on what the performance is. So it feels a little bit like that as well of the escapism that comes with music, and both like being a fan and being a performer of, I'm going to pretend not to see, close your eyes and not see what's going on, or even close your eyes and block out that light, right? Of saying, pretend that I don't see that there's a spotlight on me, pretend that I don't see how many people are looking towards me. And I think that comes with some of the like responsibility that you can feel, like the weight of that as someone in the public eye. And I definitely, through different things that Stray Kids has done and said throughout the years, I think that they feel that, because it does come with a certain like responsibility of how are they going to represent the group, but also like us as fans. And I think Bangtan has talked a bit about this as well, like specifically of Stray Kids is both representing Stay and Stay is representing Stray Kids. Both sides of that, of whatever the fans do reflects on them, and whatever they do reflects on the people who are fans of them, right? So there's that feeling of responsibility for that. And when that comes along, it's like, I have to put on the right performance, right? I have to be someone who can show up as who I'm supposed to be, as like a member of Stray Kids, as an idol, as someone in the public eye. I have to close my eyes, pretend that I don't see the spotlight on me, so that I can perform the way that I have to and not let the emotion come out. Oh, the vocal run. Is that an ad-lib? Okay, no, we're just gonna go back because first off, beautiful, all of that, but in exact contrast to what I was saying before of like, we have all these light, airy, delicate sounds, and then we have that moment of Cover Me that's like sang with all of Sungmin's chest. Bangtan as well, like this huge note, right, held the little like vocal run in it, but it's like this big sound, right? And it feels like that, both crying out, but also the overwhelm having an outlet, but also the fact that they're saying, cover me, is I understand that I have to do this, right? And I want you to have my back. It's like I was saying before, cover me, but also cover me as in, let me put on the mask, let me block out this light that's on me, even like talking about pretend to close my eyes. It has this feeling of fortifying yourself. I know that I have to just keep going because I can't like stop here. And I think that goes with so much of what they've talked about in their music, for all of the more in your face, bragging confidence that we've gotten in some of the other songs. For all of that happening, it's like there's still that like self-consciousness, there's still that feeling of, am I going to fail? Am I going to represent myself in the wrong way? I also know that I have a long way to go, right? Like I still see myself as on a journey and like in the middle of that, and I don't want to stop here, right? Even if I feel some of that overwhelm sometimes, even if having a spotlight on me gets to me sometimes, right? Bangtan's lyric of talking about, I didn't realize I was going insane. Like I didn't realize that pushing all of this down and just being like, it's fine, I'll get through the next thing. It's fine, I'll get through the next thing, of talking yourself through it. I also understand that sometimes I have to feel what I'm feeling. And we have like this idea of cover me can being both, I need someone to watch my back, and that can be like fans, that can be other members of Stray Kids, but it could also be like, I need someone to put a barrier between me and the world so that I can feel what I'm feeling and get it out of my system. And that's why we have this burst of emotion. Even getting Han doing the like chorus again, he doesn't lighten up his voice the way that he did previously. I love getting that comparison. We get the strong notes in that upper part of the melody because it feels like this like overwhelm of both like, I need to feel what I'm feeling, and also I need to, I don't know, fortify myself, take some of the strength that I have, because I know that if I can get through this to the next thing where it's better. Like there is this kind of optimism in it as well, but it also feels like a nod of, it's okay for me to feel what I'm feeling and to talk about it, especially like in a song where I feel like you have a certain separation that you can claim of, it's just lyrics in a song, a certain freedom that comes with like the creativity of being someone who makes music, because there's a deniability, like plausible deniability that you can have of it's like technically a work of fiction in a lot of ways. Even if you're pulling from an actual experience, you can at least be like, oh, I'm not saying that. It's just lyrics in a song. It's just the performance of the song, right? So having that, especially people who are in the public eye, people who are idols, and there's a certain like perfectionism expected, it can be really helpful to let out some of those emotions into this. It's just a ballad. That's all it is. Also, having Han be the last lyric on a song like this, it's fine. I didn't need my heart to be in one piece anyway. Whatever. Gorgeous. All the Chicha lyrics. I feel like I dissociate a little bit from my own feelings. Like, I got into the beginning of the song and I was like, uh-oh, this will ruin me. And I was just like, you know what? We need to stay focused on analyzing, pulling apart meaning. We can just pretend it's fine. Because, again, anytime something like this is sang by Bangchan, even talk about it, I'm like, I can feel it in my eyes. It gets me emotional because I think he's done so much to get to this point. And I think that he especially feels so much of that responsibility of how is the group represented? How are the fans represented? What does it mean to be a member of Stray Kids, and not just a member, to be the leader of it? That I just get so emotional. And also the change of the lyrics at the end of the light shining. Yeah, the warm light shines down. Again, like, I know that if I could just get through this night, if I can get through this dark period, I'm gonna get to a point where it's warm light, it's sunshine. It's not just the overwhelm of that light, and like I can't even appreciate it when it's there because of how I feel and like the isolation that I feel. And again, having Han, of all people, saying that also gets to me because everything that he's been through, and I just feel a lot of things. So I'm probably gonna go have a good cry, get it out of my system, because we have another song. Everything's fine. Leave. This had better not make me extremely emotional again. I need us to end on at least a slightly high note for my mental health. Leave makes me nervous, though. Okay. Sounds like we might be a little bit brighter. I love the filter on it.
Oh baby please don't hurt me 날 울리지 마 널 사랑했던 남을 아직 못 지웠지만 Oh baby please stop for me 더 내들지 마 너를 위한 결말 Yeah we're done 이런 미련은 영혼으로 끝내 아픔이 전에 슬픔 그 전에 감동 너는 삶 자신 없어 이게 속내야 드러내지 못해 더 차갑게 뱉은 말투
Ooh, okay, I know I'm interrupting. I feel like it's still sad, but it's not quite getting me so far, my immediate feelings. But I think that it's so interesting we're playing around with light again. Almost this longing, but also acknowledging an end to something. And I'm just keeping it in mind of some of the thoughts I'm having about the album as like a whole. Yeah, the words come out cold. Ooh, I think it's so interesting to, like, we got cut by the sharp edges, right? Oh, I think especially like talking about like, hey, like our differences, like we can't get past it. And it's kind of like I was talking about how it feels like we have the longing and also the understanding that something has come to an end. And even though you might have affection for something, it's shifted into like pain, but then also those feelings start to fade too, and you're just left with this, I don't know, like memory. I think that there's a difference between understanding that you have in the past loved someone or loved something and that you don't feel that way anymore. I think that's such a difficult thing to wrap your head around, of you have such strong memories and there was a time in which you loved this person or you loved this thing. And I'm keeping the door open because I have some thoughts about how this might work in like album wise. And because that emotion is still true, right? There was a past time in which you felt that way. It's so difficult to like reconcile that with the fact that you don't feel it anymore. And it's such a strong emotion that it like cements those memories, right? Like it's really hard to forget someone that you had such a strong emotion for, and yet those emotions can fade, right? We got cut on the sharp edges if we were trying to hold on to something, and because it had sharp edges, it just ended up hurting us more, like the more that we tried to hold on to it.
사랑으로 포장하기 너무 다른 것도 날카로운 조각에 베었어야 알지 우리 나는 나고 너는 너야.
Love the little register. Ooh, I love that symbol. We're talking about seasons, right? And even this, I hope the warmth will make you bloom into a flower that never dies, right? I love that feeling of, I hope that you grow and become something like beautiful and like you prosper and everything, and that I wish you the best. This isn't a ending on like negative feelings, right? This isn't like a huge blow up that ends in destruction and like desolation. It's, I hope that you go on and do better things. Like I don't have any ill will towards you. I just understand that we can't like fix the differences that we have. And I love that we're talking about like flowers, like the spring imagery with that, and like a new beginning and like seasons changing and everything. And then we get the like leaf falling on the bench, right? Images of like autumn, of something coming to an end and dying or fading. So I love that we're getting that, all of that imagery coming together. Felix. I love, again, like this a filter that we're getting in all of the like production, right? With this like guitar specifically that I'm feeling, but having that like nostalgic sound to it, I think fits so well with this. I know the memories. I'm also thinking of this previous time. I'm afraid, I'm in pain, I'm okay, right? I know that I'm feeling all of these things. There's so much insecurity of losing someone who you saw as such a central part of your life. Like, again, even like a certain thing in your life, a passion in your life, right? Something that becomes core to who you are, your identity, how you see the future, right? Being like in a relationship of any kind, whether that's romantic or friendship or whatever, you make so many decisions about what your future is going to be because you picture that person with you, right? You see the future with that person beside you. And then when suddenly you're like, oh, I have to think of an entirely different future that doesn't include that person, right? Is a very unsettled feeling. And talk about being afraid and like being in pain because you have to give up part of who you are. You have to give up the vision that you had of who you were going to be, all of the plans that you might have had. And just like even talking in the lyrics of, I haven't gotten over this. I still have these emotions, and I also know that it's not enough to make this work. And having that followed up with I'm okay. I know that like you're gonna do better things, right? You're gonna bloom and do wonderful stuff in your own life. And I know that I'm also gonna be okay, that this is like the right thing for us to be doing. And also it hurts, even though don't hurt me of let's not linger, right? Let's not fight for something that we both know is not going to be the best for us, regardless of how we might feel. And even though, again, the leaf on the bench, but also like loneliness. There's an empty space beside me, and now there's like this remnant of me going into a season in which something is ending, and I'm gonna have to deal with the winter, and I know that, but I also understand that we're both gonna do better, right? Like we're both gonna get to a point where we're okay.
Next to me, oh baby, please don't hurt me.
I love the fast delivery too. Like, I feel like the speed up of the performance is almost like this, like having so much to say that you just need to get it out. I'm having a little bit of deja vu with this song. Like, part of me is, do I know this song? And I don't know if I've heard part of it or if they've just had a song that was like, I had a similar thought about. Y'all, I make so many videos, I can't remember what I've said, okay? I need to be honest with y'all and make it clear that I don't remember what I've said in a video the moment that it comes out of my mouth. I've said it myself, I edit my videos, and then people are like, oh, you said this in the video. I'm like, I did? No idea. So straight out of my brain the moment that it comes out of my mouth. So I have no idea if this is a thought that I've had about Stray Kids, if it is just me having thoughts about stuff in general. I don't even remember if I've ever said it on a video or if I've just said it to somebody in my actual life. So I'm just trying to be honest that sometimes I might have a look on my face because I'm like, do I know this? Or am I just getting similar vibes? I don't know. But I do love all the imagery. I love the fast delivery that we're getting to be like, I need to get all of these words out. I also love this image that we got with Hyunjin's part of like saying good morning to the moon. Again, morning, we think of the sun rising, and this is talking about, I still feel like I'm in the dark. I feel like my world is inverted in a weird way. And I love the world has stopped, but time goes on. I think that is such a vivid way of describing that feeling of losing something. And I know translations are going to be what they're going to be, but I think that's how it feels, right? Like, you feel like the world should stop when you've lost something that is important to you, and yet it keeps going. Like, stuff keeps happening, the time continues, and people are like, why are you a lot of people who like aren't as invested in the feelings that you're having are like, why are you still feeling this? A lot of people are uncomfortable with any kind of like negative emotion, sadness, grief, loss, loneliness, like anything that you might be feeling that is perceived as like a negative emotion. People, that makes people uncomfortable, and they're like, we can just fix it and you'll get over it and we can continue. And you're like, no, I feel like everything has stopped. My world doesn't exist the way that I thought it was going to anymore. I need everything to just stop so I can deal with it. And then talking about, I hate that I'm still like searching for this person. I know I shouldn't. I know that this is for the best. We get into Felix's part where I know that this is like the best for both of us. And I hate myself for like blindly searching for you. It becomes habit, right? Again, when you're like expecting this person to be there, when you're expecting this part of your life to still be around, that it becomes this habit to look for them and to consider them when you're making decisions or you're doing things. And instead you're like wandering around being like, oh yeah, I don't have to consider that person in my decision making anymore because I have to accept that like it's over. And even though I know that's the best for us, it's still difficult to rewire that part of your brain. Like, it just takes time, which I think is a big part of what they're talking about in the song of, I understand that right now it hurts. I understand that right now I'm not over this yet, but it's still yet, right? Being, I think, the important word of, I know that I'm going to get to a point where it's okay. And I know that I'm going to get to a point where it doesn't become habit to look for you anymore. I'm sorry. 불러지진 둘의 상처. 떨어지는 별빛 사이에 나 홀로 걸어. 떨어지기 직전까지 눈물을 닦아. It bops though. The lyrics should take me out. Ooh, even just there's no point of trying to put together like the fragments of my heart of being like, I know that there's nothing left to put back together. Talk about like puzzle pieces and earlier lyrics too. I understood that like before the puzzle pieces like fit together and we had this mutual understanding, and now we don't. Like, we can't make we can't get past the differences anymore. And this of wandering and being like walking alone, and this feeling of just having to be in that feeling, right? There's no way to fix that feeling of like loss other than to just be in it, and it sucks. I'm having flashbacks. It's the worst thing when you're dealing with that kind of sadness, right? We're like, I know that I just have to keep going forward, and I have to just be in it because there's nothing I can fix. Like, I can't go back to a previous time where everything was okay and I got to be in that moment of being in love or feeling that emotion and like being happy. Like, I can't just transport myself back there anymore. No matter how much I might try to like pick up the pieces and put it all back together, it's not going to be the same. Time keeps moving forward, and I just have to accept that I have to deal with the process of adjusting to this loss. Like I said, you just have to go through the winter. And it sucks. You're constantly like frustrated with yourself and the world. Like the fact that you're like, I should be over this and it should be easy because I know it's the right decision. And yet I know there's no use to me like trying to fix this, right? Because talking about other people in your life that are like, oh, how do we fix this problem? You're also in that mode, right? Where you're like, I want to not feel this way. How do I fix it? And you're like, I know that I can't. I know that I just have to deal with the feeling. And it's so frustrating because you're like, I feel like I should be doing better. I feel like I should be good. And instead I'm okay. And you know what? That is a victory in and of itself.
떨어지는 내 심장을 겨우 붙잡아 찢어진 마음을 붙여봤자 I'm afraid I'm in pain I'm okay 허전한 마음이 불사들켰나봐 이 벤치에 앉아 A lonely leaf sits right next to me La 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 I'm missing you
Oh.
Oh baby please don't hurt me
Timeout. Okay, processing. First off, having the la la la's, where we also had the like la 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 la. Very different vibe, but also the I'm missing you. In tandem to that, it almost feels like this like daydreaming or just like biding time or again wandering, meandering, like this feeling of not really having a direction because your whole life has been like upturned and you're like, I know that I just have to keep moving. I just have to keep going and then we'll figure it out when I feel better. So it's I'm missing you and I'm gonna sing this little ditty to myself and just get through this because I have to. And then you had that drum come in, crashing in, and then you're gonna give me Changbin vocals, like full on vocals. I'm gonna have a word with them at this album. I know that I'm behind, right? I know I'm a little late to this party. I'm gonna have to sit 3 Racha down and we're gonna have to have a conversation about this one in particular because I feel a lot of things and I don't think I signed up for it. I don't remember signing that.
La 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 I'm missing you Oh baby please don't hurt me 나를 울리지 마 널 사랑했던 마음을 아직 못 지웠지만 Oh baby please stop for me 더 멀어지 마 너를 위한 결말
Sungmin.
Yeah we're done La 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 I'm missing you
I mean, what a track. Also, love that we get the group vocals at the end, having this feeling of universality or like a shared emotion. I think that we all at some point have lost something in some way, right? That can be in a romantic relationship, that can be like a friendship, that can be like anything in your life where you're like, oh, I love this thing. It can be a passion or a hobby or like something that is precious to you. And also understanding like you have to give it up. And that at least I compare myself to like visual art. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a visual artist. I say that tentatively because of what I'm about to explain. But I started in visual art when I was really young. I had more success than probably a young child should in that career. And it broke me. And then just gave it up cold turkey. And the feeling of having to give something up like that is such a central part to who you are and that you love. And it's taken a lot for me to look at visual art in the same way. I eventually went on to be a visual arts teacher, so I did get there eventually, but it's still something that I struggle with in terms of creating my own stuff from that because it's wrapped up in all of those emotions. And there's a part of me that knows that it's not the best for me in a lot of ways. So even that could be something that you're pulling with the song. And I think that you can see it on the surface level as just like a romance song. It can stand alone like that. But I think in tandem with the rest of the album, which is why I bring up my experience with visual art, I think that it feels almost like losing a passion or an idea, because I feel like the journey we've gone on is like almost the destruction that can come along with this idea of Rockstar, right? This idea of like almost being simplified down into a symbol of the thing that you create as opposed to a person, right? And that's come up in like different lyrics of them starting to show almost these like cracks in the facade, this like self-consciousness, this I understand that I'm going to be doing something that's off the beaten path, and I'm going to be doing things that people don't really expect, and I'm going to be doing my own thing that not everyone is going to vibe with. And then going into, I know I'm not going to be perfect, but people are going to want me to be perfect, and like how do I balance that out, and all of that kind of building up to Cover Me, of the human vulnerability of that song, right? Of like fully seeing the like the struggle and the emotion and the like people that are like under all the layers that come along with being someone in the public eye, right? Especially like this, because it's like K-pop, and then there's like idols, and then there's like Stray Kids, and then there's like them through like stage names, right? And then there's the person that they actually are, right? There's so many layers that you have to get through to get to that person in some ways, if you're like an outsider like you and me are, right? And even when we get to see some of that candidness, it's still not like them in just like their everyday life. It's not like knowing them of being like their friend or family or someone who's known them for a really long time. So I think getting Cover Me as like this moment of everything, kind of the pressure building of you like wanting to do these great things, wanting to grab onto something bigger than yourself, and then also like feeling that pressure, feeling that like black hole of the gravity crushing in on you until you get to that breaking point, and also being like, I know that I have to just get through this moment. And Leave feels a little bit in line, at least if I'm going for a narrative in the overall album. Again, songs can be independent and just exist in isolation. I also don't know what Stray Kids' intent was for this. I haven't checked out anything of them talking about it, so this is just my interpretation of the album. But it feels like someone understanding that they have to give up part of that vision, right? Understanding that like they can't balance both being a person and going after kind of the ambition the way that they have been, and understanding that there's like some grief with that. And I think that it's also interesting with Stray Kids as a group that this is a little bit along in their career, right? This is not them starting off. This is them also starting to do some new things that I've already started to pick up, and going through their music, of them like trying different things, of being a little bit outside of the box. I'm even getting some hints of early days stuff, like pre-debut things, or like really early on in their career where they were still trying to figure out how to get their feet under them and what they were trying to do sonically. And I say that not because I feel like they're the same as they were at that point, but it feels like they're experimenting again in a way that I think is going into a second phase of what it is to be Stray Kids and what it means to as them as like performers, especially like the more popularity they get, the more like attention is on them, but also again as artists who have some say and some influence and like some direct creativity in like the songs that they're making. How do they want to present that, and how do they not get stuck in a box of this is like what their sound is, this is who Stray Kids is? And I feel like there's a very like clear image that they had for a while, right, that got them a ton of popularity. You go to God's Menu and even like Thunderous, right? It's very specific like vibe and sound, and I think that it became the expectation, and I like seeing them leaning into some other stuff and experimenting with some things and going into a different phase, especially after 5 Star, with that being like a full album. And it feels like this is a little bit of a goodbye to, again, can just be a romance song, but it also feels like a goodbye to a previous phase in your life, regardless of what that might be. And you can miss it, and you can be nostalgic for it, and you can like not be over it yet, and you can understand that you're just in the fall of that season and you still need to go through like the winter before you can enter into the next thing. But it feels a little bit like them making their peace with that, a little bit of knowing that it's going to be a struggle, but also understanding they can't go back. And I think that along with the rest of the stuff that they're doing on this album, I feel like it's in line with that. Even going into the multiverse kind of vibe, right? Of I want to do something that's like in parallel to what we're doing instead of like existing within the same space. Very interested to know what the next thing is, because I do like I know a little bit of some of the stuff that they do after this. Like I know at least a tiny bit of like Chick Chick Boom, so it intrigues me of what we're going to get going forward, of them continuing to explore a different side of what they might do as a group, right? And continuing to like grow into other things. Really love that album. I went into it wanting to love it, so I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like otherwise, right, as a fan of Stray Kids. But I like seeing them do different things, and I like seeing them feel like they're exploring other stuff. And even just like visually, some of the visuals that we got also felt like they were leaning out of what I had come to expect from them. And just love that we went on like a whole journey with a bunch of the sounds and the different themes and things that they were exploring. I don't know what my favorite song would be on this album. I feel like at the moment I'm like, cover me, because I feel so many things about that. But I don't know how much replay I'll have of that song just because I feel so many things about it. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I'm conflicted between loving the sound of certain things and then other ones being like, I'm emotionally attached. Let me know what your favorite song off of this album was, because I feel like my mind is all over the place with that one, but really loved it. Excited to see what other stuff they do, especially since I know at least some of the kind of viral clips of some of the songs that are coming up. It makes me excited to be in on the joke a little bit. So I'm excited to continue maybe getting slightly more caught up on their discography. I've just given up at this point. I don't think that I'll ever be caught up on Stray Kids. I think it would be a miracle if I were, but let me know what your favorite song off of this album was down in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed listening to that along with me. You can click this playlist to go into my previous reactions, or you can subscribe to me next time I post a Stray Kids reaction. I will see you in the next video. Bye.